You decided to play Diablo 2 Resurrected and you finally got your character into hell. You're incredibly sick and tired of everybody just teleporting around on a Blizzard sorceress using the moat trick on Mephisto. You want to farm, but you don't want to be inefficient. In this video today, I'd like to teach you about something called Elite Sniping and one of the best strategies for farming in Diablo 2 Resurrected. So let's talk about what Elite Sniping is. This farming strategy requires you to kill one of three types of monsters. You have champion monsters or unique monsters. These all fall into a grouping that we call the elite type monsters. They'll have blue or golden names, and they're typically harder to kill, but the benefit is that they'll drop at least one item that will always be magic quality or higher, or a gem, rune, or a massive amount of gold in the form of champions. Let's go find an example and I'll show you just that. Here are your base type monsters, especially on players 1 settings, don't have a good chance of dropping a lot of items. So let me just pull these ones over here and I'll kill them to show you. We just killed a good amount of monsters here, right? Something like a dozen monsters, and we got some gold, a key, and a set of arrows. Right over here, there's a unique pack. So this will be a boss monster with minions. Here you can see the shaman has a name, has additional affixes, and when I kill the shaman himself, you'll see they drops 4 potions and an item. And here we go. We have a champion pack, so we have 2 blue skeletons. When I kill them, let's see what they drop. So a massive amount of gold and 2 potions. Hopefully a different example here, and an item of magic quality or higher. So when we focus on only killing those monsters, you can see how you can drastically increase the chances at getting really nice items, either sets, uniques, rares, and magics, as opposed to killing your way through a ton of smaller monsters that aren't elite packs. There's an even more efficient farming type that you can go into, which is farming a super unique. So a super unique is any monster that has a set location spawn point in the game. They will always have the same name. They will always have at least 2 affixes that are the same, and then they can roll additional affixes. And the benefit here is that they drop 2 items of either gem, rune, or magic quality or higher. So one of the best known examples of a super unique that gets farmed is Pindle skin. He's right here inside of Nilithak's temple, the red portal right next to Anya in Act 5. And the reason why he's typically farmed is because he is so close to an area that's easy to get to. He spawns at the back of this hallway. He's always going to drop 2 items of magic quality or higher, and you can very safely walk into the next area and then take a town portal back. Hey, also, if you like these types of videos, just know that I stream Monday through Friday on twitch.tv/macrobioboy. So come and hang out in those streams where I'm making these videos actively and doing this testing. The first question to ask is, what are the benefits of elite sniping? First and foremost, when you're elite sniping, you don't need to increase the player count. Regardless of how many players are in your game, they're always going to drop at least gold or an item from a champion pack, at least 1 item from an elite pack, and super uniques are always going to drop 2 items. So if you're looking to magic find, the benefits of playing on players 1 difficulty and settings, especially in multiplayer, is that you typically don't need a lot of gear to be able to kill the monsters. They're in their weakest form possible, so you're able to more easily stack magic find. If we were to compare this up against farming Mephisto, the way to get the most drops from Mephisto is to kill him on players 5 settings. In a lot of scenarios, players 7 is the best that you can get, but on Mephisto, he actually caps out at players 5. The issue with players 5 is that Mephisto will have 3 times his base life pool. Every player settings that you increases a monster's life pool by 50%, and the amount of damage they do by around 8%. So on players 5, you basically have to kill Mephisto 3 times to get a slightly larger amount of items to drop from him. Whereas with elite sniping in players 1 settings, monsters are only worth their base value of life. So you can forego a lot of plus skills in order to add even more magic find to your build. And let's talk about player settings very quickly in a little bit more detail. But how does farming something like Mephisto, which is boss farming, a different strategy in D2, compare against elite sniping, especially when we're talking about super unique monsters? What I did was using my characters on BattleNet, so randomized maps, which is another detriment to doing something where you're not sure where the monsters are going to be. That means that you have to factor in how long it takes to get to the farming area before you can start killing. I ran 10 runs on a 63 FCR sorceress who has roughly plus 10 skills and farmed Mephisto 10 times out using the moat trick. Then what I did was I used something like the paladin to go farm Pindle skin. The benefit here is that when you're farming something like Pindle skin, your movement speed in town is the greatest limiting factor to how quickly you can farm. Considering you can put Vigor Aura on swap with a Harmony Bow or just use Vigor on a Paladin, the faster you can get through a town, the better you are. Whereas the Sorceress, while she can use Telekinesis to hit a waypoint, and she can use the Telekinesis to hit the red portal down below, she still has to slowly run through town. And very often she would put her Magic Find on her swap, so it's actually difficult for her to use a Harmony Bow on swap for Vigor, especially in the early game. I then took the average of 10 Pindle runs, and here were the findings from these runs. So first, using my Sorceress as the basis, randomized maps, we ran 10 runs, with the longest one taking close to a minute, and the shortest one taking around 34 seconds. But on average, we were killing Mephisto, looting the chest behind him, and returning to Act 4, which is the most efficient way to do that farm, taking us about 44.3 seconds. Keep in mind also that I am a speedrunner. I am probably getting to Mephisto at a higher average speed than a more casual player, even somebody who has a lot of hours in this game, because most people haven't spent multiple years studying map tiles. On the other hand, using my Paladin with Vigor Aura up, farming Pindle on Battle.net with the ping that you get from online took me at most 12 seconds and at least 10 seconds. Real rough math, I could kill 4 Pindles in the amount of time that it would take me to kill 1 Mephisto, and this was on Players 1 settings with comparable gear strength. Now this is all well and good, but we don't really have a clear picture yet, and that is, what are the chances that Mephisto is going to drop something like a Shako, which we'll use for our benchmark, versus Pindle skin? Well, let's go look at the drop calculator on maxroll.gg just to see what their mathematic chances of dropping those items are. So Mephisto has a 1 in 2035 chance of dropping a Shako if you have no magic find on your character at all. Whereas Pindle skin only has a 1 in 28,129 chance of dropping that same item. Might be saying here, Mac, easy close case right now. I'm going to be farming Mephisto. Look at that much better drop chance. And to that, let me just say, hold on. Let's look at the math a little more closely before you jump to that conclusion. If we take the relative chance of Mephisto dropping this item versus Pindle skin, and just very quickly, before anybody actuallys me about actual statistical analysis, I understand that the value that is right here is just a relative value of that item dropping, and it is not a definite saying that if you kill Mephisto 2,000 times, you will get the item. If you want to do the math, which other members of my community have luckily done for me, you can confidently say roughly 61% of the time that if you were to kill Mephisto 2,035 times, you will drop a Shake. Just like saying you can, with a 61% confidence, say that if I were to kill Pindle skin 28,000 times, I would drop a Shake. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these numbers, since they're actually just relative to one another, they're only comparing to one another, and I'm going to multiply their average kill speed to determine roughly how long you would expect to farm one of these monsters before you would drop the item. So if I were to take our chance of 2,035, you'll see that you could expect pretty confidently that if you were to farm Mephisto for a little bit over 25 hours, you would drop a Shako. And if you're somebody who is typically doing a ladder start and you're farming Mephisto looking for these items, I think you could agree that within 25 hours of gameplay, you would expect to see a Shako from Mephisto as long as you're farming relatively efficient. Now let's do the same for Pindle so we can get a better idea of how they compare to one another. So Pindle is 28,129, and you'll see that within 87 hours of farming Pindle skin, you could pretty confidently expect to have dropped a Shako. Now you might be saying, I'm not really convinced yet. What about the magic find difference? Is it putting more magic find on and farming Mephisto, even though it might be slower to get there, will actually get me a better value than putting that much magic find onto a Pindle skin? Well, let's just very quickly look at what those numbers look like, because it's actually kind of interesting how closely they all match together. So if we were to put 500 magic find onto our character farming Mephisto, you'll see that our chance increases to 1 in 765. So if I were to input that chance and then do the math, which is our original chance divided by our new chance, you'll see that the relative chance increase, that's a lot of chance, has bumped up by about a factor of 2.5 or 2.66 to be more exact. So that's going to drastically reduce the amount of time that you need to farm the monster in hopes of seeing this item on average. What about Pindle skin? Putting in 500 magic fine for Pindle skin drops us down to 1 in 10,575. So we input that here. We do the same equation, and you'll see that the number is almost exactly the same. So 2.659, which you can round up to 2.66. All in all, putting the same amount of magic fine onto a character, killing 2 monsters that can both drop the same item, you should expect to see a similar increase in the chance of getting that item, which means that you could roughly take your time to kill divided by this number to get a more accurate representation of how long you should expect to farm for a good chance of dropping that item. But earlier I was making the argument that you're able to stack a lot more magic find onto a character that isn't a sorceress and has built-in mobility. So you don't need to put magic find on swap if you can just put the magic find on your character itself. So why don't we just look at these numbers, comparing a 200 magic find sorceress, which I think is pretty par for the course, especially once you start getting some legitimate farming gear onto her in the early game. And just for shiggles, let's leave the 500 magic find on our paladin, and let's assume he's using a 4p topaz armor, a 3p topaz helmet, chance guards, gold wrap, since he doesn't need to be able to survive anything because he's attacking from afar and he's a paladin, so he has all res on the shield. You can put a rhyme on him. It's very easy to stack something like 400 or 500 magic find. And let's look at the number difference there. So if we only have something like 200 magic find on Mephisto, now it has a 965 chance. We'll put that in, 965. And you'll see that we're losing something like 40% increase in drop rate. So we're only sitting around somewhere around the 2.1. And when we're talking about doing thousands and thousands of runs, that difference is going to add up. And if I were to just very quickly show the difference in time here. So if you're increasing the chances of dropping the item by 2.1, you're going to expect to drop that item in less than half the time. So roughly 12 hours of farming to be able to get that same item. Now let's look at Pindle just to get an idea of the relative strength difference in adding more magic find to a different character than the sorceress. And then when we do the same math for Pindle skin with his increased chance rocking more magic find than the sorceress is, theoretically speaking, we take his time to kill and that drops down to 35.25 hours. So a pretty drastic difference. All of a sudden farming Pindle skin, which you can get to much easier on characters who aren't the sorceress, and you can stack more magic find, you're looking to get a very similar result to a speedrunner farming Mephisto doing the exact same ladder strategy, expecting to drop a Shako somewhere within 35 hours of farming him at this point. Now here's the kicker. There are much better targets than farming Pindle skin where you could do this exact same equation. And on top of that, in a single game, you could actually farm all of them in the same amount of time it takes a sorceress to go farm Mephisto. Oh, please, you didn't think I was just gonna sit here and make a video trying to make an argument that disproves the thing I'm trying to explain, which is the strength of elite sniping, right? That would be ridiculous. No. I got an ace in the hole. So let me introduce you to Bone Ash, Eldritch, and Shenk. All monsters which are directly off the waypoint all take, on average, 10 seconds to go kill, with Eldritch actually taking much less time than that, but I'm kind of including Eldritch and Shenk as a single package, so the amount of time it takes you to run down to Shenk and then kill him is being averaged into that 10-second kill time for both of them. Oh, and also, they actually have much better chances to drop a Shako than Pindle does. And just to back that up, let's go look at the drop calcs for players 1 with no magic find. So if we look at Shenk the Overseer, you'll see that he has a 1 in 27,084 chance of dropping Shako. So let's plug that into our calc. So you can see with no magic find, you should only expect to have to farm him for around 75 hours, so 12 hours less than Pindle skin. Eldritch has a 27,012 chance, so very similar here, but we'll go ahead and put it in. You're getting slightly closer to exactly 75 hours to farm Eldritch. And then my legitimate ace in the hole is Bone Ash, with a drop chance of 25,798. So you'll see that farming Bone Ash, you could expect to drop a Shako, confidently speaking, roughly 50% of the time, in just over 70 hours. So now let's just very quickly fill this in for the chances of getting these items and the time difference if we were to consider having 500 magic find on our Eldritch kills, our Shenk kills, and our Bone Ash kills. So to very quickly look at the chance increase, again, we're hovering around that 2.66. And then if you take the time to kill previously up against the time to kill now, you'll see that Bone Ash, 500 magic find, farming him once every 10 seconds. You could expect to drop a Shako from him. Eldritch within 28 hours of gameplay, and then Shenk within 28 hours of gameplay. So while Pindle skin is still looking rough in comparison to Mephisto farming, Bone Ash, Eldritch, and Shenk, which are incredibly easy to get to, and you're also getting comparable to Mephisto farming times because you're able to stack more magic find, who don't even need the Sorcerer's Teleport or Enigma to be efficient. You can literally put a teleport staff on swap or just use stuff like Charge and Vigor. Now that's not all. We're forgetting one very special case, which is the reason why Elite Sniping is literally S-tier mega chad, best type of farming for efficiency in Diablo 2. The Barbarian, with the ability to easily stack the most magic find in the game because he can dual wield weapons, something like the Alibaba or a 6-isted gemmed crystal sword, also has one of the strongest abilities in the game for generating loot, and that's Find Item. When we're thinking about a Find Item, high magic find, high mobility Barbarian, we're thinking about something like the Zerker Barbarian. I'm going to go ahead and show you Dark Humility's Zerker Barbarian guide on Maxroll, just to give you an idea of what the numbers look like. The Barbarian, starting very early with budget options like Alibaba, Chances, and Gold Wrap, and then later on with ridiculous gear like a 6-isted Phaseblade, as well as all magic find charms across the bottom, huge Shako, additional crafted pieces, etc., is able to stack some pretty wild amounts of magic find. And then on top of that, with all the plus skills that you can easily stack, your find item chance goes absolutely through the roof. So you'll see here that DH's build is actually stacking a 71% chance of finding item. And then if I go look at his build guide stats, you'll see that he has something like 794 magic find on this build. So find item is a skill that says 71% of the time, the monster will drop its loot again. So regardless of player settings, what player setting the monster was killed on, how many people are around you, none of that matters. It's a flat chance that if I roll the dice, 71% of the time, the monster will just drop items again. So using find item, what you can say is, if we take 71 as the baseline, 29% of the time that you kill a monster, they'll drop 2 items if you're hunting super uniques. But 71% of the time, they'll drop 4 items. So if you take the chances of dropping 4 items, 71%, then the chances of dropping 2 items, 29%, and you multiply the total numbers of items by those percentages and add them together, it roughly means that every time you kill a monster, you are getting 3.42 items. And just to show the math, if you take your total numbers dropped on average divided by the normal amount of items dropped, you get 1.71 times, or 71% of the time you're double dropping items, just so you can see that the math plays out. Now, Eldritch, Pindle, and Bone Ash can all have find item used on them, but Shenk can't. In fact, there are just some monsters that you can't use find item on. Now, what does this mean for our expected time to Shako for each monster that can benefit from find item? So let's just say it is a Barbarian, equal farming time as our Paladin was. And then on top of that, he's using find item at 71%. If we take our character and we look at the time difference of increasing up to that 500 magic find was, and then we increase the chances of getting an item by 71% of the time, dropping 2 items, you'll see that a Hork Barbarian with 500 magic find should expect to get a Shako within 20 hours of farming Pindle. They should expect to get a Shako within 15 hours of farming Bone Ash. And they should expect to get a Shako within 16 hours of farming Eldritch. By the raw power of abusing the fact that this game loves barbarians, you have now gained efficiency over a speedrunner farming Mephisto as fast as they can and as efficiently as they can on a non-sorceress class, and you're getting better results. Now that's still not all. Remember when I said it takes on average 44 seconds for me to go and farm something like Mephisto? This doesn't take into account the amount of time it takes to go from character lobby to then start a new game to wait for the game to load, which is on average something like 6 to 8 seconds, depending on how fast or slow your connection to BattleNet is and the processing speed of your computer. But let's put that on hold for a quick second. If each one of these farms is taking me on average 10 to 12 seconds, and let's just say I did Pindle, Bonash, Eldritch, and Shenk all together in a single farm, how long would that take me? Well, it's taking you on average roughly 50 seconds. Because you have to add in about a second or two for going back to town and hitting a waypoint, which takes much less time loading than starting a new game, but you still have to add it in. So if I could farm all 4 of these targets in the same amount of time it takes somebody to farm Mephisto on average, and I can Hork 3 of them for 71% of the time, doubling the amount of items that I drop, and I can do all 4 of these farms, then save and exit, meaning that I'm losing the same amount of time that a Mephisto farmer is taking when they save and exit. You actually need to look at the chances added all together of all 4 targets, that if you were to do a single farming session, so let's just call it a 1-minute farming session, either a 1-minute Mephisto or a 1-minute Pindle, Bonash, Eldritch, Shenk, the numbers get even tighter. Now, using the raw power of editing, I have numbers for you, which I am only a little bit ashamed to say took me a while to figure out, because I couldn't remember how you put something into odds. The answer is 1 over p minus 1 for people who care about it. Taking together the chances of dropping a Shako across the 3 monsters which can be horked, and then adding in Shenk's base chance. On a barbarian with 500 magic fine, you get 0.000605 blah, 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 blah. Putting that into odds, the chances are 1 in 1,651. Now, if we take that time and multiply it by the average time it was taking that sorceress to go kill Mephisto of 44 seconds, you get 72,666 seconds, which in hours is 20 hours. So your average expected time of farming will put you somewhere around 20 hours to be able to do this farm. Not needing to have a sorceress, not needing an enigma, just stacking as much magic find as possible on any character, or if you're being really smart about it, a Hork Barbarian, and you start to see how the strength of elite sniping can begin to vastly outweigh what a lot of people would probably consider to be the most efficient way of farming, which is that Mephisto, Blizzard, endless grind, cold sork farming that everybody is used to. And just to very quickly cover the extended form of elite sniping, which is actually just going through and focusing the boss of packs, most notably something like the pit Zerker. We do this out in the pit. Just quickly explain how this would work. As you're running through a farming area, you would identify an elite pack. You would attack the elite monster itself, and then while ignoring everything else, you would hork its body for a chance at getting additional items. And then normal unique monsters will drop a single item on kill and a single item on hork as well. The benefit to doing this in a farming area as opposed to a single super unique in a section is that typically there are anywhere between 2 to 6 elite packs per map area. So if you're able to quickly farm those areas, and at this point you would need something like Enigma to be able to do this, you're actually able to churn out more items per hour than even just going and farming a single super unique monster, even with horking them. And that's what makes something like the Pit Berserker such an efficient magic finding machine. So if you're still thinking about playing that old tired Blizzard Sorceress or whatever version of it that you want, just to be able to boss farm, just remember that there are alternative farming strategies which can be used across a multitude of different class types, especially effective versions of builds that are able to get so much more out of the elite sniping farming technique than any of the other farming techniques that exist. I hope that this video goes a long way to be able to explain one of the better and more niche forms of farming strategies in Diablo 2 Resurrected, so you get a better idea of its strengths, its weaknesses, the benefits of farming in this way, and the ways that you can do it more efficiently, so that when the next ladder season starts or whatever have you, you're able to experience a wider breadth of farming strategies. If you like this video, please let me know down below what other types of farming strategies you want me to cover. There are quite a few in Diablo 2, and I do intend on making a video on all of them. Although whether or not they will be as in-depth as this definitely is something up for debate. I think this is going to be one of my longer videos, but I really wanted to show you how the numbers break down so that if you were somebody who always said like, hey, I like elite sniping, I'm not exactly sure what its benefits are, at least now you have numbers to be able to give to people just so that they can get a better idea of how it works. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what you think down below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.